Good evening, everyone. Can you hear? Before we start, we have a foundation, a 501c3. You may have heard about it, the First Green Foundation. We're doing a silent auction tonight of the print of the triggerfish that's up here that was done by my wife, Dr. Cindy LaRoe, who's in the back there. Wave, Cindy. Say hi to everybody. And we also have representative from Advanta IRA back in the corner. If anyone wants to talk to him about self-directed IRAs, which is a great place to invest in First Green Bank stock, and they are awesome. He's awesome. He's about the most knowledgeable guy I know concerning IRAs. So even if you just have questions, he's a great person to ask. I would like to start with an introduction to John Thedford. John is the author of Smart Moves Management, which is the books we have here that we'll give out today till we run out, and he will sign and autograph the books for you. I met John at a political fundraiser and have gotten to know him, and I read the book cover to cover, and then I outlined the book cover to cover, and we typed the outline up, so if anybody wants that, you got to read the book first, but the outline is a good reference source. If I could have John come up and say a few words.
Welcome to your shareholders meeting. We met at a fundraising event and got a chance to know each other, and he read my book and learned about me. But just a little background, I'm a certified public accountant, and I took two companies public back in the early 80s, late 90s, pawn shops, Cash America and Easy Pawn. And so in 1992, I drove my black Honda Accord to Florida and said, I can do this. And so I set up a chain of pawn shops called Value Pawn and Jewelry. And I told all my investors, much like the investors you have here, I said, listen, I was there when we took Cash America public. I was there when we took Easy Pawn public. I know every mistake they've made, and we won't make one of them. And we didn't. We made bigger mistakes. We made mistakes they hadn't even thought about making. But as an accountant, I realized accountants, and I can say this as I am one, know the cost of everything and the value of little. And so I learned that it's all about culture and building a great culture. And so we built an organization based upon a great culture, a winning culture. Our numbers were spectacular. We started the company from scratch, sold it for $120 million, and I wrote a book about that. And so I'm going to share that with you all tonight as your founder's giving you that gift. So nice to be here.
Thank you, John. And I have a couple of his gems in my talk, so I'll give him proper credit and all that stuff. But it was a big motivation or a big source of inspiration for what I'm going to tell you tonight. I would now, welcome to the shareholders meeting. John said that, but I didn't. I would like to now introduce Dr. Joel Hunter, one of the founding members of our board. Joel, I originally approached, did I ever tell this story? Is it okay to tell this? I originally approached Joel when I was putting the bank together, and my daughter a few years before had said, Dad, will you go to church with me? And I said, well, no, I don't do church. And I was probably agnostic at best at the time. And so she stayed on me. And I went to church, and it was Northland Church. And we drove to Longwood and went to church every Sunday. And the transformation occurred, and I'm now a born-again Christian. But I knew Dr. Hunter's position on the environment and creation care, as he calls it. And I approached him about possibly joining us to start the bank. And he declined. He respectfully declined and said, I would love to, I just have no time. And I said, okay, I understand. And about 2 weeks later, he gave a sermon, and I don't think he realized he was queuing himself up for this, but the sermon was basically that you can't sit aside if you believe strongly in something, you've got to commit yourself, and you've got to make a difference. You got to step in and make a difference. So I called and got an appointment, and actually I think we did it on the phone, and I take notes of all his sermons, so I have copious notes of all his sermons, and I have all the little gems, in quotes, and I quoted the quote that he had said in the sermon, and he accepted. So I asked him if he would be so kind to get up and just give a few minutes of what it means to him to be involved in a values-based financial institution.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, you're always in trouble when somebody starts quoting you to yourself. You know you've already lost, But let me tell you why, as a pastor, I'm on a board of directors of a bank, because this obviously is not my wheelhouse. This is not. But let me tell you about the character of this organization and why I am so thrilled to be a part of it. There are three very important things in my life. First, as you would understand, as all of you would understand, values are supreme. You've only got so much time on this earth. And so you need to be doing that which counts for good. We call that stewardship. It's a management of time and resources, and to be a part of an organization that operates on the basis of values, not simply on the basis of prosperity, not simply on the basis of gain and all, but really on the basis of values, means everything to me. And the second thing that thrills me about this is that these folks are really good at what they do. I mean, you can have people filled with great values have no idea what they're doing, and bless them, but don't get in business with them because you want competence, and the fact that this bank's competence is based upon personal service, again, means everything to me, because there's cutthroat competence and there is caring competence. And this is an organization that's full of, if you could sit in the board meetings, you would hear they really care for people. It's not just, how much of a margin can we make sure this has. They really care for people. They really care about the impact they're having on God's world. And so that means everything to me. And the third thing is this. This staff, I want to be a part of a team that really appreciates one another. In my church, you can tell if there's a committee member happening because when you walk by, everybody's laughing, which means they're really enjoying one another. And they really, their competence isn't a driven competence, it's a delight in what they do. And the fact that so many of these folks are reassembled because of relationships, and they have a team that has lasted over the years, and they appreciate one another and they respect one another, gives me a great deal of security about the future of this organization. And so I just wanted to give kind of an amen, sorry, to what we're doing together, and that you can feel really good about being a part of something that will make a huge difference in what happens out there. Let me tell you one story, because preachers all tell stories, and then I'll sit down. This is a true story, or at least if it's not, it ought to be. But I heard it as a true story. Before the Berlin Wall came down, and Becky's brother, by the way, is my lovely wife and best friend. Becky's brother was in Berlin when that wall came down, and he watched it come down. But before the Berlin Wall came down, some of you were in that city, and you know the terrible animosity between the East and the West. And every once in a while, there would be little feuds that would break down over the wall, And this one time, people from the East just decided they were going to play a terrible joke on the people who were residing just over the wall on the West. And so they backed up, in the middle of the night, they backed up just loads and loads of garbage. And they just dumped it over the wall, just stinking mass of garbage. And so the people in the West, before they responded, because they were believers, before they responded, they got together and they said, okay, let's not just react, let's respond. And so about a week later, after they cleaned up all the garbage, in the middle of the night, they got these ladders and they went up on the wall and they lowered on the other side warm baked bread and blankets and little knitted things, gifts of little baby clothing and booties and so on and so forth, along with this note: you can only give on the outside what you have on the inside. Well, if we expect this world to be better, we got to build it on the inside, and not just in our personal lives, but in our institutions. And I believe that's what Green Bank is doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. One other thing, important thing I forgot, is Hugh Kent here? Did Hugh make it? I know, I haven't seen him. We have one of our good customers, and we call them FOBs, Friends of Bank, is Hugh Kent, Thrill Hill Blueberries outside of Eustis. He's got a very large organic blueberry farm, and they are in the middle of picking now. So we have free organic blueberries to give away before you leave. And we bought 36 pounds, and I thought that was going to be enough, but I'm thinking it might not be. So you probably going to have to make a decision. It's going to either be a book or blueberry. So try to do both but on the way out. A couple months ago, I started thinking about what this talk would be. Actually, I start 6 months before, and then it just worries me to death, and I obsess. And then about 2 weeks ago, it was like, where's Robbie? It was like a week ago. I scratched everything and just started over. And he really hated that because he was helping me put the PowerPoint together. But I had a thought to try to meet with all our large shareholders over the last few weeks. And I met with about 30 of you. And a common theme emerged in those meetings, and I thought, well, geez, there's my shareholder talk. I need to talk to these folks about what's bothering them, and what's bothering you guys, and this may not be universal, is you really want to get inside my head and know what we're doing, where we're going with the bank. And I thought that, we send out emails, we tell you our financial position and all that good stuff, like that would be good enough. Geez, I just got your money. But that's the problem with communication, and that's the illusion that it ever occurred. So I realized that I really hadn't been telling you what I was thinking. This is somebody pondering, and that was what I did after a lot of those meetings. And I came up with the concept of a 2020 vision. I know that's corny and all that stuff, and that's what everybody's doing with their strategic plans. That's a picture from New Zealand that I took with my iPhone, and it came out that nice. I just spent 3 weeks in New Zealand and Australia. The week in Australia was on business. The 2 weeks in New Zealand was vacation. The bad thing about that is it's about 50 hours on airplanes. The good thing is it's about 50 hours on airplanes. So if you think, in my case, well, I want to try to do a strategy for the bank for the next 6 years, it's plenty of time to think about it. The problem was I couldn't stay awake the whole time, but this may surprise some of you. It may not surprise many of you. I don't know how to do spreadsheets. I don't know how to do Excel. When my first class in computers in college was with punch cards, and I never got beyond that. So when I do budgets or planning or pro formas, I do it longhand on a legal pad. So I did page after page after page of my iterations of where I thought we could take the bank. And I came to the conclusion after the meeting with the Global Alliance for Banking on Values, which was in Australia, small is beautiful, but large is essential. And it's essential for values for the shareholders and values for our values proposition that we stand for. And I had started at $2 billion by the end of 2020, that we could be at $2 billion in assets by the end of 2020. And after page of that, I realized that it wasn't possible. And the main reason it wasn't possible was because we couldn't raise enough capital without doing something like going to a private equity firm, doing an IPO, which scares me to death. Our attorney has advised me over and over, don't do that if you can avoid it. You're going to give up control. You're going to give up board seats. And the first thing that's going to go is that values proposition. So I took my numbers and I gave them to one of our CPAs with an audit firm that we use and asked him to verify and confirm them and make sure that I hadn't made any mistakes. And this is one of his spreadsheets. And where it takes us is to get to $1 billion by 2020. We're going to need to raise a little over $35 million. Actually, it's $34 million because you might see over here our thermometer, we're about at $1 million on our current capital raise, which is really good, and it's really started coming in very rapidly. So we're going to need to raise $34 million from today. But if we do it, and there's no guarantee that I've got all the disclaimers because I don't want anybody suing me with a shareholder derivative action if we don't actually do this. But if we hit $1.068 billion in 2020, our book value should be $29.58 a share. That's a nice number in and of itself. If you just do the math, how many shares do you own times that's the book value. But the real kicker is, what do banks sell for? When we sold Florida Choice, those of you that were shareholders, I'm sure you remember that we got a record multiple. We sold the bank for, 3.7 or 3.8 times book. And then 18 months later, the bank we sold to sold for a couple times book. So it was a 7 times return in 7 years. Well, the pundits are saying 2 times book is the new 4 times book. We're never going to see 4 times book again. But keep in mind, when we sold for what we sold for, the average book value was about 2.5 times in the country. But I don't believe them. I don't believe that it's 2 times book. And I especially don't believe it's 2 times book for a really well-run bank, especially with the values proposition we have. So this is a chart that I just got about a week ago from one of the investment banking firms. Well, actually, it's from S&L Financial. And it is the average tangible book value multiples for by year. National is the blue, the orange is the state average. And you can see it's been, in Florida, in 2011, banks were selling for 0.8 times book. I mean, it was bad, and most of the banks were bad, in really bad shape, and weren't going to make it. You can see what's happened. It's skyrocketed, and it's especially skyrocketed. This is first quarter 2014. We just got an announcement from one of the investment banking firms that a bank just sold for 1.8 times book. It wasn't in Florida, but it's the trend has started. The lights came on about 6 months ago. It's just, in my opinion, just going to escalate from there. So back to this chart, if we're at $29.58 book value, and 2 times book is the worst case scenario, we're talking almost $60 a share. The worst case scenario. Of course, there could be a cataclysmic economic event. Anything could happen. Anything could derail it. But I personally feel good about it, to the point where I'm going to exercise all my warrants that I got in the last offering and buy some more in this offering. Another thing that we have that nobody else has, especially when we start talking about 2 times book, this is a sort of map of the members of the Global Alliance for Banking on Value, and you can see us there. We're one of only a couple in North America. We have a values proposition. I think we have a different set of potential acquirers than anybody else does, except for New Resource Bank in California. Gosh, are they? Well, it's New Resource, and then it's Sunrise up here in the north. There's a lot of big values-based financial institutions in the world that, if they desired to get into America, we would be the perfect dance partner. So how do we get there from here in 5 or 6 years? The first is culture, and as the CEO, I'm responsible for the culture. I want to quote you one of the quotes out of John Thetford's book. He said, "The point of business isn't profits for the sake of money, but to become a serving corporation. Companies are simply a form of organizing people in such a way that they bind together with a core ideology to improve the universe of lives they touch, and perhaps even to create a ripple effect beyond that." Doesn't that sound just like us? Doesn't that sound like exactly what we're trying to accomplish? I gotta get a drink. I noticed when Pastor Joel said this group's been together for a long time and they respect each other, and Melissa rolled her eyes. Did y'all catch that? She was sitting next to me. In charge, you got to have somebody in charge. That's one of my strengths, and that's one of my weaknesses. I'm a control freak, maybe a micromanager, maybe. But you have to make decisions, and this was a quote by Warren Buffett: "Be brave when others are scared, and be scared when others are brave." And I think that really applies to us, especially when we started the bank. Everybody was saying, "What are you doing? Are you nuts?" And I had lots of 3 o'clock in the morning, what was I thinking episodes. But it's worked, and it's worked perfectly. Execution, some of these are obvious. You have to turn the tactics, the strategic into tactical, plan the work the plan, distill it to the essence. I mean, that's self-explanatory. Don't use more words when you can use less. Communicate. What's the problem with communication? The illusion that it ever occurred. I'm great about that. I communicated completely clearly. I do not understand why the rocket blew up on the launch pad. That's, of course, because I communicated in my head perfectly clearly, but I just didn't communicate. Accountability. If you aren't accountable, no one else will be. Measure. You can't affect what you don't measure. Ruthless follow-up. It's not done till it's done. I'm sure we've all run into that. Fix it. If something is wrong, it's probably your fault. That's me. That's everybody. Step up to the plate and realize it. Our performance. I'm going to probably shoot through some of this in the interest of time. Values, we talked about it. Without values, there's nothing. Ask some of the CEOs of some of the fallen CEOs in the Fortune 500 companies. The foundation, we talked about the foundation. We've got the sign up for the silent auction, so please put a bid in on the painting. We've really taken the foundation to another level in the last year. We were recognized as a gold participant in GuideStar Exchange. That's a rating system for nonprofits. Coworker programs, we've talked about this. We've just got zillions of them. And then some of the measures that we're starting to really try to measure and push the envelope is stuff like our 401k participation. We'd really like to get to 100%, but we're doing very well. This is our wellness allowance. This is a really neat thing. We bought Fitbits for anybody that wanted them, any of our coworkers and directors, and they've got a competition running at all times on who gets the most steps. And I was going to try to beat them, and then I ran over my Fitbit with my truck. So I'm trying to get another one now. This is our charging stations. We graph it. We chart it every month as to how much energy is being saved with our charging stations. And that's a really cool picture you can't see there, but it's a Nissan Leaf and a Tesla being charged simultaneously at our stations out front. Mission Specialist Program. This is a program we started to recognize employees that meet certain criteria. These are our volunteer hours year to date. We've done 638 hours year to date with our coworkers. This is a really interesting chart that you can't read, but we've been responsible for almost 300,000 watts of power in solar photovoltaic installations. We've given away $37,500 in grants, and we've done $470,000 in loans for those systems. These are our loan programs where we give discounts to commercial and residential projects if they're sustainable. Our solar loan program, if you're interested in solar, it's a really good program. It's 100% financing, 10-year fixed rate, and it's a really low rate, 5.95%. This is the people that bank with us that we've been able to identify that are mission aligned. And as you can see, it's a pretty substantial number, and it's going up every year. We're going to be changing our core processing system starting this June. So if we screw up your account, please bear with us, because we will make some errors. It's a really big endeavor, but our new system will allow us to much more closely track this. This is our system that we put in place to track and measure the impact of our values proposition. But we need your help. Everyone's heard this quote. What can we do to help to change the world? If you've got ideas, we just had our Winter Park opening. We had a raffle or a drawing for people that would give ideas of earth-changing or ideas to change the world. And we had some really good ideas. And if you can come up with something or whatever, just let me know. This is our marketing programs. Last year was really successful. This year it's really got off to a great start. We've generated almost $9 million in deposits from our marketing campaigns. And I'm just going to blast through these things, and we'll put this slideshow. Can we put this on the website, the slideshow? Or does it take too much space? I'll try to put it on the website, and you can go back and look at it to get an idea of some of the stuff we do and track and monitor. The advertising equivalent value, I was talking to John before the meeting started about this building and the LEED Platinum and the effect of it and all of the benefits. Well, one of the benefits is we get a huge amount of press. And if you measure the press, for instance, if we have a full-page article in a magazine, then we can go to that magazine and say, what would a full-page ad cost? And then we can extrapolate it into the value of it. And it was almost $300,000 in 2013 for press coverage that we got. This year to date, it's almost $35,000 in some of the various places that we've gotten that press. This is a social media summary for the year. I was talking to somebody before the meeting. We have 1,409 likes on Facebook. We've been in business 5 years. My brother's Mellow Mushroom next door, within 2 weeks before it opened, had 2,000 likes on Facebook. So must be a big difference between pizza and checking accounts or something. This is a social media competitor landscape, which is really interesting. Well, we're up to 1,400 likes now, but at the end of the year, we're 1,000. United Southern Bank doesn't even have Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Citizens First doesn't have them. First National Bank of Mount Dora has it, but they only have 144 likes. So just an example, I don't think we'll ever get to, Wells Fargo, 610,000, but who knows, we might. We're certainly more likable than they are. So does it work? That's a tree hugger. That's what I get accused of being all the time. These are some of the accolades we've received. Again, some of that press. And then to the financial performance. We closed the year out at $248 million in assets, loans of $201 million, with net income of $1.39 million, which was a real nice year. This year through April, and you can see we're already at $560,000 net income. We're up to $266 million in assets. So the year has started off with a bang. It's going very, very well. This is our income compared to budget. We're at the end of April, we were $170,000 over budget. And no, we didn't sandbag the budget. That's what my director's sitting out there looking at me. We did a chart to show the growth from the time we opened. This is total assets, total loans, and keep in mind we've been constrained by the FDIC. They've limited our growth to 25% annually. up through the 7 years. So we've only got about 18 months of that foolishness left. This will be on our website, so the FDIC can go on and watch this and hear what I say. But at this point, I'm kind of over it. This is our total deposits, non-interest bearing deposits, which are really, really important. I've told you before, move your checking accounts here if you haven't already, because the checking accounts, we don't have to pay interest. It's our cost of, it's our raw materials. So the cheaper you can get your raw materials, the more money you can make. You can see a really nice trend line there. This is a peer comparison. This is first quarter of this year by one of the investment banking firms. You can see our loan growth for the year. We're 4th in Central Florida out of 29 banks. We're 20th in the state out of 191. Return on assets, we're 6th in Central Florida. We're in the top 25% in the state. Net interest margin, we're number 1 in Central Florida. We're number 10 in the state. So, top 5%. The real important thing is credit quality, which is asset quality. And you can see we're number 2, number 1 in Central Florida, number 1 in the state. There's one kind of outlier. This non-current loans to total loans, it shows us as 12th and 72nd, but we have 0. So how can anybody be better than us if we're 0? That's the banks that have been hemorrhaged over the years, and they've written off loans, and then they were fortunate enough to be able to collect a loan they've already written off. So they're actually in the negative, which is good for them, and it's helping the banks survive that are out there. Texas ratio, that's a calculation of the asset quality in the bank. We're number 1 in both Central Florida and the state. Number 1 in the state of Florida for our loan quality. And that's the most important metric for an investor in a bank. Expansion plans. This is our Winter Park grand opening. If any of you made it, there were about 600 people there. It was absolutely awesome. We had a great time. These are our current locations. We would like to expand more in the Orlando metro area and across the I-4 corridor, wherever that is, and maybe into the Bay Area in Tampa, because we really think our brand and our values proposition will play well there. Small is beautiful, large is essential. This is the summary of the 2020 vision. The future benefits that we see going forward with our values proposition. It'll reduce risk. It'll help maintain the credit quality that we have. There will be less slash and burn developments in our portfolio because we won't do them. The concentration reduction, there's Hugh, the blueberry farmer. These are some of our customers that are sustainable, values aligned, and with more customers like these, we'll have less strip malls and the high density sprawl residential developments that proved to not work in the last meltdown. Regulatory support, the regulators are finally loving us. It's really kind of fun to go meet with the people at the FDIC, and they ask all the values questions now. It's not just about the financial stuff. This is just some of the stuff we'd like to try to take to the next level. And then, of course, we have stock for sale. You can exercise your warrants that you got in the last offering. We have a new offering going on right now. It's $14.75 a share, minimum 20,000 purchase. And if you want to buy some, we'd love to sell you some. If you don't, if you can help refer us to people that would be really good prospects. And one of the main reasons is we've got about $30 million in capital. I've sold $25 million worth of stock, mostly in our circle of influence right here in Central Florida. Well, there's only so many of you folks, and there's only so many doctors and lawyers and entrepreneurs and Indian chiefs. So we kind of need to get outside into a broader area, both geographically and circle of influence. So make sure to give us some referrals. That's it. And now I will turn the meeting over to Melissa and Paul for the perfunctory, boring business stuff. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My name is Scott Taylor. I'm an investor. My wife and I, Elaine, are investors in this bank. I want you to look at this little display here, our mission. To do the right thing for, what's number one? The environment. Number two, our people. Number three, our company. Number four, our shareholders. Now you might feel badly as shareholders that you're number four. But I'll venture a guess that each of you, as number four, are very proud of what you're doing to help to foster an institution, a lending institution, that has put its heart and its soul into protecting these first three things before you. And I think and this is not a paid political announcement for Ken. I happen to like Ken very much, and I happen to know that Ken is very, very active in our local environmental scene, as am I. So I see him all the time. You may not necessarily see him all the time, but to be a part of this institution that helps to foster. You can sit down if you want to. You want to take the microphone from me?
No.
Okay.
This.
This is okay. Thank you. Well, no one is throwing tomatoes yet. I just want you to understand how important this institution is to our local environmental impact, and how proud I am to be an investor, as is my wife Elaine, in this bank that has helped to really push the concept of environmental responsibility in not only Lake County, but with this guy. I mean, he's a go-getter, and he's going to down in Orange County. He's going to help to foster that kind of sense of responsibility for people who really don't understand, but he does. LEED Platinum certified building here. Everything that's happened in this bank has been absolutely amazing, and I want to thank him very much. And I, as a shareholder, I'm very proud to be a part of this bank, and I hope all of you are as well. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Karen, this is sort of like the woman who is going to give testimony. She said she stood on her rights to not speak. This has been opened up without you maybe meaning to questions. Isn't that rather strange that the shareholders are the fourth?
In the banking circles, it is not.
May I ask the man who I sat around this company? Isn't that extremely unusual that the shareholders would be last? I mean, I have some modest shares in different companies. Please.
Sure.
Can I finish my question?
Please.
If I appreciate it. I have shares in some different companies, not much. And I've never heard of the shareholders coming at the very end. You know, generally, you pay and offer benefits, if you will, that are competitive. I'm talking in the industry. It would appear your goal as the president is to be the number one as far as offerings to the employees. This is completely contrary to any good way of running a business, is it not?
Yeah,
I'm asking him, okay?
After many years with Chase Manhattan Bank in New York, I can tell you that shareholders are kind of at the bottom of the list in the banking industry.
Are they really? I was not aware of that.
Yes, sir, they are.
I didn't buy shares or stock or whatever it's called in this bank with the thought that I was going to make the world a nice tree-hugging environment. I bought shares in this company based upon the growth that they had, but they sold off, and
In the banking industry, the,
You don't allow anybody to finish.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate it very much, thank you. I bought shares in this bank with the thought of growth, not to plant more trees. I'm finished.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I can tell you that depositors, correct, are the first responsibility. In the banking industry, depositors are the first responsibility of the bank. And then there are vendors and there are employees. I'm not sure if that's twisted one way or the other, but the equity holders come last. This display here is correct. And you will, under the guidance of this gentleman, in my opinion, benefit as equity holders. But in the banking business, it is different from general corporate society.
Let me ask you.
Is that correct?
You've got the mic, so let me ask you something else. Are you on the board?
I'm not on the board.
Okay, fine. I'm on the board, whether, I was just gonna ask, who is ever on the board, why would they have compromised the shareholders, the stockholders, whatever it's called, compromise ourselves to allow the restaurant next door to be parking here?
I'd like to answer that if I could. I'd like to answer that if I could, please.
Can I just finish my question?
Well, no, sir. I have the microphone, but the first issue is that we outperform all of our peers from the financial, therefore shareholder perspective. If you look at this chart, which is the peer group for the state of Florida and for Central Florida, the first quarter of this year, I am the largest shareholder by a multiple. I have approaching $2 million of my money invested in this. I cannot afford to put that much of my net worth at risk to plant more trees, as you say. If I could again quote from John Thetford's book, the point of business isn't profits for the sake of money, but to become a serving corporation. I had no interest in starting this bank if it was just to make another buck. I have an interest in starting this bank to change the way banking is done. And in the process, we will make more money than anybody that's investing in any of these other banks in Central Florida or statewide. And I think our numbers are proving that, and they're proving that because there's a lot of people that do care, and there's a lot of people that invested in the bank, and there's a lot of people that bank with us only because of that. I tell people pretty frequently, the good thing about this is it attracts people, but it doesn't piss anybody off. And if it pisses you off, I don't mind if you leave. But
By asking the question?
well, it attracts people, but it doesn't piss anybody off. And if they want to bank here because they feel their responsibility to take care of the planet and to take care of our coworkers, which I think at the end of the day, it's going to reflect far greater in your stock value than if we didn't. If we have engaged employees, they're going to create engaged customers. Engaged customers are going to bring more engaged customers, and then at the end of the day, we end up with a far higher and far stronger stock value.
May I finish the question I was asking before you told me you had the mic? May I finish the question?
Well, I think we really need to move on with the meeting. I would be glad to entertain afterwards. Thank you.
I just want to know why you're exposing the bank liability to allowing people to park here that don't know the restaurant. Because if they get injured, they're going to get sued.
When this building was built, there's a cross-access parking easement for the entire piece of property. The restaurant next door, anybody that builds anything else down that property has the right to park on this property. We have the right to park on their property. They are exposed just as much as we are exposed. We insure against risk. We have exhaustive and extensive insurance for all elements of the operation of the bank. Thank you very much. And any questions, I'll be glad to field them after the meeting. I'll turn it over to Paul Mill.
Thanks, Ken. One point I want to touch on before we get to the boring part of business, as Ken had mentioned. Ken mentioned briefly about the deposits, and if you don't have your checking account here with us, obviously that's our cheapest source of funds to help us continue to be more profitable. Banking's pretty simple. You bring in deposits, you make loans, you make sound loans, and that's you as investors. If you want to see the strength of the bank and the performance, you can look at the asset quality, and Ken mentioned that as well. But I will tell you, as the president of the bank, I also know not all of our shareholders bank with us, and that's similar to running a lawn mowing service and then paying somebody to mow your lawn. So if you don't have your banking with us, it's kind of an injustice because you're paying somebody else. Whether it's a free checking or not, you can't beat our products. We don't charge for anything. And if you can do better by our service, I need you to let me know so I can address it. I feel like we provide the best service there is. It's our culture. It's what we do. I'll challenge you to look at any other CEOs or presidents or CFOs business card and get their home and cell phone number on it. So I challenge you tonight, if you do not have your banking with us, that you do move it. Invest back in yourself. You've already made the commitment with the stock, but I'd like to request that you make a full commitment by moving your banking relationship. So the stock is just as important as the deposit. So with that, you're going to get to watch Melissa and myself read, as Ken mentioned, the perfunctory part of the business here. So with that, this meeting will please come to order. I'm Paul Roundtree. As I mentioned, I'm the president of First Green Bancorp. I want to, again, thank everybody for coming and taking time away from their families and their jobs to make it here tonight. Your interest is appreciated. As Ken mentioned, please, you're welcome to stay around after, ask any questions. All of our executives are here. The majority of our board is here. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I'd like to start off by introducing a few of our directors, and I'll apologize if you're here and I don't see you, but you did get to hear Pastor Joel Hunter speak. He's here in the front row. I know John Schmid was standing on the corner. Randy Strode is also there on our corner. Dr. David Wayne is here as well. I believe Mike is stuck over there making pizzas, Michael LaRoe. And Shannon Carlisle here in the third row. And I don't know if Scott Ailes is here or not. I haven't seen him. But I believe Scott Ailes is the only other director that I didn't mention. We also have some of our employees here. Melissa to my right is our executive vice president, CFO and COO of the bank. Just to look around the room, and I know I will miss people. We have Becky in our IT department. Daniel, you don't get to see, running behind the scenes, also in our IT department. I'm just going to scan the room here, make sure I try not to miss anybody. Robbie, you mentioned, Ken mentioned his assistants here. Jim Hester, who runs our Volusia County market. Kathy and Alma are sitting on the stairs in our residential loan department. Brooke Rodriguez, who runs our retail operations for the bank. Cindy Vitale De Jesus in the back. Sorry, Cindy. And she's our head teller in Claremont. Darla, our senior customer service rep here. Tracy Durrance, our branch manager in Claremont. Ryan. I see Ryan. Ryan back there. I'm short, so you're already at a disadvantage. You're pointing. Janet, right in front of me, manager of our Ormond Beach office. We also have the manager for Winter Park, who just joined us, and name slipping my mind. Nancy Little. Anybody else you guys want to point? Oh, Jeff Coward standing in the back, our commercial lender in Orlando. Mary is sitting down that I wouldn't have been able to see over the pulpit. Most of us will have these name tags on, so feel free to approach any of them, and they'd be able to answer any questions as well. And I'll apologize to the rest of you if I missed you. So as we've mentioned, we've got an excellent team. I'll tell you, I've been with several banks in my young career, but I'll put this team up against any other banking team. This is a small industry. We all know each other, and I can tell you, as shareholders, as a board member and an executive of this team, there's not a better assemblage of people from a character standpoint, from a knowledge standpoint, just good people. And I know it's said before, but you surround yourself with this good of people, good things happen. So with that, we're going to start the boring piece. The purpose of this meeting is to consider the approval of 3 matters. The first is the re-election of directors of the company. The second is the approval of amendment to our stock option plan for officers and employees. And the third matter for consideration is to vote upon the approval of our stock option plan for the directors of the company and First Green Bank. I now turn to Melissa Atkins, our Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of the bank. Melissa, do you have a list of shareholders who are entitled to notice of this meeting and entitled to vote at it? And do you have evidence of the mailing of the notice of this meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Roundtree. Thank you, Mr. Roundtree. I have a certified list of shareholders of record as of the close of business of March 7th, 2014, the record date fixed by the Board of Directors. I also present an affidavit as to the mailing of the notice of this meeting and the company's proxy statement dated March 18th, 2014, to every shareholder of record of common stock at the close of business on March 7th, 2014.
The affidavit of notice is approved in order to affix to the minutes of this meeting. In accordance with the authority vested in me as chairman of the meeting, I now ask Melissa Atkins and Jessica Stevenson, who I mentioned earlier, our compliance officer for the bank, to act as inspector of the election. The responsibility of the inspectors are to tabulate the ballots and proxies submitted by shareholders pursuant to the notice of shareholders meeting and to make their report to the chairman of this meeting. If there's any shareholder present who is not registered at the door or has not presented their proxy, please do so at this time with Ms. Stevenson. All right, I direct the report be annexed in the minutes of this meeting. A majority of the issued and outstanding common stock of the company entitled to vote at this meeting is present in person or by proxy, and thus constituting a quorum. The meeting is now declared lawfully and properly open for the transaction of business. Since we have several resolutions to consider, I'd ask that you hold your questions until all three resolutions have been read and move for approval. The first resolution we're about to consider relates to the re-election of the directors of this company. This resolution is as follows. Be it resolved that Scott Ailes, Shannon Macklin Carlisle, Pastor Joel Hunter, Kenneth LaRoe, Michael LaRoe, Paul Roundtree, John Schmid, Randall Strode, Dr. David Wayne are hereby elected as directors of First Green Bank Corp. Inc. to serve in such capacity until the next annual meeting of the shareholders of the company and until their successors are duly elected and qualified. You've heard the reading of this resolution. I will now entertain a motion from the shareholders to authorize, adopt, and approve the first resolution. If you could, please state your full name for the record. Thank you, Mr. Smith. We have a first and a second. If you could please state your name for the record. Thank you, Mr. Stanley. I will now read the second resolution relating to the approval of a stock option plan for the company's officers and employees. Be it resolved that the amendment to the officers and employee stock option plan of First Green Bank Corp. Inc., as described in the company's March 18th, 2014 proxy statement, be and hereby is authorized, adopted, and approved by the shareholders of the company. You've heard the reading of the second resolution. I will now entertain a motion from the shareholders to authorize, adopt, and approve this resolution. If you could state your name.
James Russo.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. And a second. Do we have a second?
Second.
If you could state your name. I'm sorry.
Scott Taylor.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. I will now read the third resolution relating to the approval of a stock option plan for the company's directors. Be it resolved that the amendment to the director's stock option plan of First Green Bank Corp. Inc., as described in the company's March 18, 2014 proxy statement, be and hereby is authorized, adopted, and approved by the shareholders of this company. You've heard the reading of the third resolution. I will now entertain a motion from the shareholders to authorize, adopt, and approve the resolution.
So moved.
Could you please state your name?
Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And do I have a second?
Second.
If you could.
John Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. You've heard the resolutions. They've been moved and seconded. If there's any questions on the resolutions, now is the time to raise them. Holders of record of common stock at the close of business on March 7th, 2014 are entitled to cast one vote per share on these resolutions. In order for the re-election of directors, the resolution must be approved by a plurality of the votes cast. In order for the stock option plans to be approved, each resolution must receive the affirmative vote of a majority of the shares represented in person and by proxy at this meeting. Again, if you haven't turned your ballot in or proxy, please do so now so that we can tabulate the results. Ms. Stevenson? Jessica? It'll be a moment while she tabulates it.
While we're waiting for Jessica, I'm going to go ahead and read a second part of this. As of the record date, there were 2,363,987 shares of common stock that were outstanding and entitled to vote at this meeting. The presence in person or by proxy of a majority of the shares of common stock entitled to vote at this meeting constitutes a quorum. I hereby report that there were 1,472,057 shares of common stock present in person or by proxy. The required quorum is present at this time. Subject to final verification of the balloting, I report that the holders of record in excess of a majority of the shares of common stock of this company represented at the meeting today in person or by proxy have voted for the approval of the election of the company's directors and for the approval of the amendments to the stock option plans. I'll now read the resolutions, or the approvals. Resolution electing directors, and then Resolution 4, 1,435,618. Withheld, 56,439. Resolution approving amendment to the company's officers and employee stock option plan. For resolution, 1,344,475. Against the resolution, 66,000. Abstained from voting, 81,582. Resolution approving amendment to the company's directors' stock option plan. Resolution 4, 1,341,165. Against the resolution, 67,540. And abstained from voting, 83,352.
Thank you, Melissa. I direct that the report be annexed in the minutes of this meeting. Again, I want to express my sincere appreciation for everyone coming. I invite you again to stay around. I do believe there's some food left over. And again, if you have any other questions, we'd be happy to entertain them. But more importantly, thank you guys again for not only your business, but becoming a shareholder of First Green Bank. Thank you. Actually, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Can you state your name? I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Pastor. And with that, the motion is meeting is adjourned. Thank you.